I'm Iris Lockwood, 35 years old, Air Force intelligence, and apparently the defendant in my own family's lawsuit. The courtroom smelled like old wood and cold coffee. I sat alone in the last row, back straight uniform, perfect shoes, polished to mirror shine. The only sound was the dull click of my name being typed into the docket. My parents were seated up front, shoulders stiff, eyes forward. Between them sat Vanessa, my older sister, flipping through her legal pad, like she was preparing for a job interview, not a war. I hadn't spoken to any of them in years. I hadn't been part of them in longer. Their attorney was sleek and smirking, confident this would be quick. They were suing me for undue influence. Translation? Grandpa gave me something and they couldn't stand it. The bailiff opened the side door. Everyone stood as the judge entered. And then something shifted. The judge looked around, then paused. He nodded at me. "Colonel Lockwood," he said clearly, before even glancing at the plaintiff's bench. "Thank you for being here. This court has reviewed the sealed file submitted in your name. We're ready to proceed." Vanessa froze. My mother flinched. And my father adjusted his tie with the same twitch I remembered from every uncomfortable truth he tried to bury. They thought I came here to explain myself, but I didn't come to explain. I came to end this, once and for all. I was the middle daughter, the one who never made too much noise, never wore the wrong dress, never asked for more than she was given. Vanessa had the spotlight from birth. The achiever, Ivy League, family firm, board meetings by 28. Lena, our youngest, was the golden surprise. Ballet charity clubs, holiday cards, with perfect calligraphy and a perfect smile. And me, I once wrote an essay about crop resilience in sub-Saharan soil patterns when I was 10. Mom asked if I could write something less dusty. Dad barely looked up. Vanessa laughed. That's the first time I remember shrinking without realizing it. I joined the Air Force the day after my high school graduation. I didn't wait for a goodbye party. I knew there wouldn't be one. I still remember the moment I stood in line at basic head-shaved shoulders squared, listening to the drill sergeant bark about identity. Everyone else shifted nervously. Me, I felt taller, seen. I didn't come back for holidays. Not by choice, by omission. Emails went unanswered. Phone calls never returned. I became something they didn't know how to talk about, so they didn't. But Grandpa always did. He was the one who called me after training exercises, who asked for photos of my medals, who sent clippings of military articles with notes scribbled in the margins. He never once asked why I left. He only asked, "Are you safe?" After he got sick. I tried to come back. I flew out on emergency leave, still in uniform boots scuffed from the field. Vanessa met me at the front porch of the family estate, arms crossed, voice syrupy and sharp. "He's resting," she said. "Maybe don't confuse him. He forgets things." I didn't argue. I nodded, stepped back, waited in the rental car for almost an hour before driving away. He died the next week. I was told the funeral was at 2 p.m. I arrived on time to find an empty chapel. The programs already boxed, the flowers wilted. A note taped to the door said the service had been held that morning. I stared at it until the wind took the corner of the paper and bent it backwards. I stood there in uniform, alone, in front of a locked church. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't have anyone left to cry in front of. That night, I flew back to base. In the weeks that followed, there were no calls, no condolences, just one envelope postmarked from Charleston, bearing no return address, waiting in my mailbox at the barracks. Inside, a small photo of me and Grandpa from a science fair when I was 11. We were kneeling beside a cardboard greenhouse, smiling with dirt on our hands. And on the back, his handwriting. "They won't tell the truth. So I've written it down." I didn't know what it meant. Not then. But something told me I would. Soon. The call came 3 weeks later, just past midnight. I was still in uniform, staring at satellite readouts from a recon sweep over northern Syria, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. "Colonel Lockwood," the voice asked. I straightened. "Speaking." "This is Alan Merritt. I was your grandfather's attorney." The hum of the bass suddenly felt louder than before. "I wasn't sure this number would still work," he said. "Your grandfather left something, a sealed file, to be opened only if legal proceedings arose regarding his estate." Legal proceedings. I almost laughed. Of course they came for it. Of course they waited just long enough to think I wouldn't fight back. He said you'd understand, Merritt added quieter now, and that you'd know what to do with it. I agreed to meet him in Charleston that Friday. When I arrived, he was already seated in his office, a leather file box resting on the table locked. He slid it toward me. It's yours. He made it clear, no copies. I opened the lid and found a manila folder with my name written in Grandpa's sharp block lettering. Underneath it, evidence. Bank statements, wire transfers, proof that it had always been Grandpa, never my parents, who paid my tuition, my flights, my housing. Letters from doctors confirming he was of sound mind when he adjusted the will. Dated video footage of Vanessa handing him estate forms and encouraging him to sign the corrected version. Audio recordings, quiet, painful, of my parents, whispering in the hallway about how to minimize Iris's cut without getting lawyers involved. And then the handwritten letter, not to me, to the court. Merritt watched me take it all in. He wanted you to be protected, he said, but only if they attacked first. He believed in earning your truth, not weaponizing it. My hands were steady, but inside something uncoiled, slowly, coldly. They thought I wouldn't fight, that I'd stay erased because I'd done it before. But Grandpa knew better, and now so did I. I stood tucking the folder under my arm. I'll see them in court. Merritt nodded. There's one more thing. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was Grandpa's signet ring, the one he wore every Sunday, even after arthritis bent his fingers sideways. He said you'd know when to wear it. I didn't answer. I just took it. And as I stepped out of the office into the humid Carolina morning, I felt the weight of something new pressing into my chest. It wasn't revenge. Not exactly. It was something colder, cleaner. I wasn't coming to plead. I was coming to stand. The courthouse in Charleston hadn't changed in years. White columns, green shutters, iron lampposts curling like old ribbon. I remembered walking past it once as a child holding Grandpa's hand. He'd nodded toward the bench steps and said, "That's where truth either rises or rots." That morning, I parked around the block and changed in the back seat. My dress blues were pressed insignia polished, ribbons aligned, collar square. The mirror on the sun visor caught my eyes just long enough to see something I hadn't felt in months. Certainty. I walked past reporters who didn't recognize me. Inside, I gave my name to the clerk. Iris Lockwood, I said evenly. Respondent. Her eyes flicked from my uniform to her screen. Colonel Lockwood? I nodded. She swallowed. You'll be in courtroom B. They've, already seated. The hall echoed with the click of my heels. When I pushed open the door, the room fell quiet. My parents were seated at the front, their lawyer mid-sentence, gesturing toward a thick folder of claims. Vanessa sat just behind them, head tilted, watching like it was a performance she'd already rehearsed. And then the judge entered. Everyone rose. The bailiff called out, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Reynolds." The judge, a man in his 60s with steel-gray hair and tired eyes, took the bench. He scanned the room, then stopped when he saw me. He stood. "Colonel Lockwood," he said clearly publicly, "this court thanks you for your service." Every head turned. My father shifted in his seat. My mother stared like she'd seen a ghost. Vanessa's jaw clenched. The judge continued. "We have reviewed the sealed documentation submitted by the late Walter Lockwood's legal counsel. These proceedings will take into account the contents of that file as per statute." Their lawyer scrambled. "Your Honor, we object these files weren't part of discovery." Judge Reynolds held up a hand. "They were sealed under conditional release. You triggered that condition when you initiated suit against a named beneficiary. I'll allow them." The tide turned before anyone could stop it. I took my seat calmly at the defense table. When called, I rose, addressed the court, and submitted Grandpa's documentation, every form recording medical note, and signed affidavit. I said little. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than any monologue. Vanessa finally snapped. "She doesn't deserve this," she shouted. She left. She was gone for years. Judge Reynolds didn't flinch. "One more outburst and I will have you removed." "She manipulated him," my mother muttered too low for anyone but me to hear. "He was old and she knew how to get to him." I turned slightly. My voice never rose. "I didn't take anything I said. I was given something. That's what you hate." Then I faced the judge again. "If permitted, Your Honor." "I have one final piece." Reynolds nodded. I opened my folder and lifted out Grandpa's handwritten letter to the court. This was sealed at the same time. It's addressed to these proceedings. He motioned to the bailiff. You may read it. I stood tall, the words folding out from my hands like a blade. And as I spoke, no one moved. Not Vanessa, not my parents, not even the room itself. Because what came next would cut through every lie they'd spent years building. I cleared my throat once. The paper in my hands was yellowed slightly at the edges, but the handwriting was sharp. Grandpa always pressed his pen like he meant it. I glanced at the judge. He gave a single nod, and I began. To the court, and whomever it may concern. If this letter is being read, then it means my family has chosen to challenge what I gave freely. So let me be plain. I am of sound mind. I was of sound mind when I altered my estate. I did not do so out of manipulation, pity, or confusion. The room was frozen. Vanessa had gone rigid, one hand on the armrest, knuckles white. My father sat with his legs crossed too tightly, one foot twitching in rhythm. My mother looked at her lap like the answers might be written in her palms. My granddaughter, Colonel Lockwood, never asked for anything from me. She showed up with mud on her boots and clarity in her eyes. While others smiled at holidays and remembered my birthday when money was involved, Iris remembered who I was, not what I could provide. I watched her build a life where she wasn't wanted. I watched her show up anyway. I saw her drive 8 hours between deployments just to fix a broken valve in my greenhouse, then leave before sunrise so no one would know. My voice held steady, but inside my ribs ached. I remembered that visit. Vanessa, had told me Grandpa was traveling. He wasn't. He was sick, and I found out by accident and fixed what I could before slipping out unseen. They will say she was distant, that she didn't call enough, but I remember the voicemails she left when no one answered. I remember the letter she sent from overseas, not asking for money or favors, just saying she hoped I was sleeping well. That kind of love doesn't always come with place settings or phone trees. It comes with silence, sacrifice, and honesty. The judge leaned forward. So did the court clerk. So did something deeper in the room, an unseen breath being held. If you read this and think, Iris doesn't deserve what I left her, then I suggest you ask yourself, who showed up when the lights were off? Who stayed when there was nothing left to gain? This estate is not a reward. It is recognition. I gave my legacy to the only one who never asked for it. I folded the letter gently. Not a sound broke the silence. Then Judge Reynolds exhaled. I believe that settles the question of intent. Vanessa finally spoke, barely above a whisper. You're not even part of this family. I turned, meeting her eyes. I was never allowed to be. But that didn't stop me from loving him. My mother stood abruptly. This is a manipulation. It's emotion dressed up as evidence. The judge looked at her evenly. No, ma'am, this is testimony, and it's the clearest we've had in this room all day. I didn't speak again. There was nothing left to say. I'd said goodbye to Grandpa once in a chapel he was no longer in. This time he got to say goodbye back, in front of everyone. The ruling came the next morning. I sat in the same courtroom, same seat. My uniform crisp, untouched by the chaos around me. Vanessa avoided looking in my direction. My parents were stone. Judge Reynolds didn't draw it out. The court finds no evidence of undue influence, coercion, or fraud, he stated. The will of Walter Lockwood stands as written and witnessed. A pause. Then the second cut. All claims brought forth by the plaintiffs are dismissed with prejudice. He looked up, directly at me. This court recognizes Colonel Iris Lockwood as a rightful beneficiary and a person of honor. We further acknowledge the unjust emotional targeting she has endured as part of these proceedings. Vanessa whispered something sharp under her breath. My mother reached for her purse like she couldn't wait to vanish. My father stared at the seal behind the bench, unmoving. But I didn't move either. Because I didn't need to. I hadn't come for apology, or acceptance, or revenge. I'd come to bring truth into a room that had never made space for it before. And now it lived there, recorded, transcribed, undeniable. The gavel struck once, sharp, final. They left through the side exit, eyes down. No press, no cameras, no statement. For once, they had nothing left to take. The courthouse emptied slowly. I waited until the last coat sleeve disappeared. The last door clicked shut, the air went still. Only then did I stand. I stepped outside into the Charleston light, the kind that hits you soft but doesn't warm you right away. The street was quiet. No reporters. No one to clap or gawk. just the sound of a flag overhead catching the wind like it was exhaling. Back at the car, I removed my cover and slid it onto the passenger seat. For a moment, I just sat there, hands on the wheel, staring through the windshield, like I was waiting for permission to feel something. But there was nothing to process, because I already had. This wasn't a story of winning. It was a story of not disappearing. I drove out of town past the old church, where Grandpa's funeral was held, where I'd once stood alone, uniformed, and uninvited. This time, I didn't slow down. I didn't need to. I knew what he'd say now. "You stood your ground, little hawk, and you didn't need to shout to be heard." That night, I went home to base housing, poured a glass of water, took off my ribbons, my jacket, my boots. In the hallway just outside my office was a small framed photo. Me and Grandpa that same science fair shot our hands muddy, our smiles crooked and real. Beside it, the velvet box with his ring. I hadn't worn it in court. Didn't need to. He was with me anyway. For the first time in months, I turned off my phone before bed. No checking email, no alerts, just silence. And it was good. Because sometimes healing doesn't come in a final confrontation. It comes in the absence of noise. In the quiet after the storm when no one is watching. And you realize you made it through. It's been a year since the trial. A year since the courtroom doors closed behind me, since the gavel came down, since the last time I looked my parents in the eyes and saw nothing I needed to carry forward. People ask sometimes quietly, cautiously, if it felt like winning. I tell them no. It felt like walking out of a fire with everything that mattered still intact. That's not victory, that's survival. The annex Grandpa funded through his trust WADUL Science Fellowship for Applied Field Research is now in its second year. We work with underfunded schools across the Southeast, bringing in hands-on science kits mentorship programs and full summer scholarships for students who've never held a microscope before. My rank earns me some attention when we apply for funding. But it's the kids that get the spotlight. Last month, a 7th grader from rural Georgia proved a theory about bee communication I once wrote in a high school paper. He built the test rig out of scrap wood garden netting and a repurposed Bluetooth speaker. He named it Lockwood's Loop. When I asked him why, he shrugged and said, "Because you didn't stop when they said no. There's a bench in the back corner of the annex grounds now. I built it myself, stained cedar wide enough for two. On the armrest, carved in clean lines, are Grandpa's words. This estate is not a reward, it is recognition." I sit there sometimes, after hours, watching the dusk roll in over the solar plots, the greenhouse, the wind turbines spinning slow and steady. It's quiet in a way the courtroom never was. A different kind of justice lives here. I haven't spoken to Vanessa, not since she walked out without meeting my eyes. Mom sent a birthday card in April. The envelope was expensive. The message inside said only, "Hope you're well." There was no signature. Dad still shows up in news articles. Donor galas, keynote speaker slots, community boards. All those places where no one asks the right questions. And I've stopped needing answers from them. Some truths don't arrive in apologies. Some only echo when the noise finally fades. There are nights I walk through the restored greenhouse behind Grandpa's old house. The one I rebuilt with my own hands, using the same blueprints he kept folded in his desk drawer. It smells of mint and soil and something older, like memory, like something planted long before I had a name for it. On the back wall is a photo of me and him, taken decades ago at that science fair. He's kneeling beside me, smiling. I'm holding a handmade censer, too proud to stand still. Underneath a brass plaque reads, "To the one who stayed curious." Sometimes I talk to him, not out loud, just in the way my hands move through the rows, in how I adjust the heat panels, in how I run my fingers along the same wooden frame we once hammered together. He left me more than an inheritance. He left me a map, and every step I take now, every child I mentor, every seed I plant, every student who walks through those doors and doesn't feel erased draws another line on it. They tried to write me out of the story, but he gave me the pen, and I learned to write myself back in.